I hear that now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, I was muted on the tablet.
Nice.
Everything's
Oh man,
confusing. We
a
got
friend of
so
mine just
much technology.
started hunting Nazis on Twitch. A plus.
Oh,
Did you
nice.
did you play with this Wolfenstein game? It's great.
Uh, this looks awesome. I played Youngblood, and it was like way too twitchy. No pun intended. It was Youngblood was too difficult for me and my brother to play. We were looking for some casual like
Oh yeah, I
killing
think
Nazis.
it's serious. The actual single player game I think is more what you want.
Yeah. Well, Youngblood, the idea of it's cool, right? It's
Yeah, it's like the Daughters of BJ Blazkowicz or something.
exactly.
Yeah, I like it. I want to play this. I played the first one. I want to play the second one, and then I'm like excited to get to Youngblood.
What's the second one? Is that New Colossus?
I think so. Yeah. And the first one was New Order. It's a challenging set of names to follow.
Yeah, but the premise of killing Nazis is great.
It's that, and I love the alternate history stuff. Like it's such a fun way to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What the
All
hell are we
right.
doing on our game?
Well, I think the last thing we did. Let's see. We have movement going, and I bet if we look in our game TS file,
Yeah.
and really, I think we're all the way down in main TSX2. Yeah. So we've got our loops, and render loop is just rendering, and that's right. So we added our frame counter. So now our update functions get a frame to work with. And I think, so let's see, the tank mover is in the server update. And it's, man, how do I stop it from doing this?
Does that feel new to you? I feel like
Yeah, it does.
and that's when you go to symbol, right? It's like I'm going to show you this intermediate thing before
Yeah, it's not
it
not
didn't
what
do
I
it that
want.
time.
So I command clicked and then I command clicked on the systems file and it took me over to this.
Okay.
Maybe it's this strange, I think we have this update as where maybe when we go to the symbol, it's like, actually, your symbol is right here. And this sure looks like something you don't want to go to.
Maybe the whole idea of a system like exporting a generic update function is a little bit too twee, and we should just export tank mover or just the name of the system. What do you think?
I like this. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not bothered.
All right.
But it
Dom,
is hard
Dom
to
is
close
staying
this.
the course. He's not going to let the terrorist win here.
No, not at all. But okay, so our update takes a frame. Our client message queue our client message queue is now Redux, where it looks for messages of type player mover
Yeah.
that match the frame. And then, it just performs the actions. And do we clean up messages at some point? We do. At the very end of our loop, we just filter everything from the past. So if we missed a frame or if you sent a message, before we got there, too late.
Yeah, I have a fine appreciation for your Redux comparison. Like while I was typing last time, it didn't quite sink in for me, but now that you're pointing it out, I'm like, damn it.
It's exactly Redux. That's the best part.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
but it's okay.
yeah, it's fine. I think the idea of Redux is basically an event queue, and event queues existed before Redux. They didn't invent the concept. Yeah, there you go. Reducers. They just
Not going to
used
do it.
fancy functional programming terms, right?
Well, and I actually appreciate that there's a level of indirection that we're not taking from Redux here, which is like there's no like we can only write to the state, and there's not this weird sort of like you have to return, an updated state object. We're just like, we got a message, we act on it. It's just a message bus.
Yeah.
But I think this pattern like leaked into our heads somewhere.
Yeah.
That's
No,
good.
I mean, well, whatever. This is an event. It's like there was like like the message pump in Win32 programming where you had a loop and you had a switch statement over a bunch of different events, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this just happens to be splintered out so different systems pay attention to different kinds of events.
Yep.
And what we don't have currently though is the notion that certain events are exclusive to certain systems. So like theoretically, the like a different system on the server could consume a move player event because they don't get filtered out of the queue until the very end of the game, the current loop. Right.
100%, which is also Reduxy, right? It's not a processor. It's just, or it's not a first come first serve. It's just that, yeah, you can look at everything on the queue that you want, which is great.
Yeah, it's good. Why don't we also talk about the other direction, right? This is a bidirectional communication that we have set up, right? And this is the server code consuming messages that it received from the client. And then I kind of want to refresh my memory. How do we do the other direction?
We don't.
Well, we do sync state, right? We kind of didn't model it yet, but we sort of faked it, I think.
That's correct. Let's see. In server update, it's probably in client update. It's player input systems. Oh, we copy. Yeah, our state sync is deep cloning the entities. And I think this is, like this is a received server message, because this depends entirely on either the server sending back its entire state with every frame, or some other ridiculous stuff. But this is a lot.
Yeah, totally. And it's also I guess it's fine. What it does mean is that the client update can run far ahead of the server update.
Yep.
But the client is only ever going to render what the server tells it to render here, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, if the client's on frame 5 and it clones the entities and adds a play or move event. Oh, sorry. Okay, we're just submitting events. The server is processing them, and we're getting 5 frames ago states because we're not predicting.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's essentially the current state of affairs, right?
That makes sense.
Everything from line 166 down is, or really, it's just line 168, right? It's just saying my current simulation on the client side is whatever the server has right now.
Yep.
Regardless of the input that I handled above, right, on line 160. And I'm letting the server take care of that. And if the server happens to consume it and then update its state, then I will perceive that once I get that information back from the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I guess I see maybe a couple of things we could do with this today, which is we could maybe do some more message passing.
Yep.
And so set up a couple other. Well, I guess player input. We're only handling one of the 4 cases. Oh my God! Go to the file. So we have our. We could shoot and we could build. Sorry.
No, it's hilarious. I see where you're going. I think one of the things I was thinking is that we could. Why don't we get to the point where everything is Would you rather start on prediction for individual systems, or would you rather get the whole game running again with no prediction?
That's what I was wondering. I was thinking that I feel like before we wrap up the rest of the systems, I'd actually like to have this become
an actual
updating. Yeah, I want it to update based on the server message, and it can be we can keep it instantaneous, right? Like we can just be like, it's 5 frames behind. We got it. We deal with it.
Yep. That's great.
But yeah, to not be deep cloning every time, I think we'll make our own prediction a lot easier, because we can move our state forward and then be like, actually, for frame X, the server said you were here.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll probably make it clear that we need to keep a frame, 10 frames of entities or something.
Yep. Okay.
So that's maybe where I'm at.
How much state do we need to actually send over the wall? Because right now we're copying all entities plus 100% of each entity. But some of that state, in principle, should just be committed to server-side simulation, and the client doesn't necessarily need to know about it, right? Would we implement this such that entities on the client side have fewer components than the entities on the server side, or should we just try to make them 1-to-1 for now?
I was thinking 1-to-1 because I can't, except for maybe I think maybe bullets not, but I can't imagine needing to at least the set of entities that are on the map to start. Mm-hmm. I think we have to have.
What I meant, we want 100% of the entities. What about the components within the entities?
Oh, I see. I see.
Like, do you need a wall collider on the client side? You need
Mm-hmm.
a damageable on the client side.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And if we look at the player, like teams targetable, I mean, I think there's maybe a bunch of it that you need.
So maybe our attitude is that, like, well, let's send it all over until we realize we don't need it, or
Yeah, I was also thinking that like the only thing that we need to send from server to client is the set of IDs. So like we need we need a shared GUID for everything maybe,
yeah.
but then we could use like a vanilla constructor essentially.
Is this the server is currently providing all the UIDs right now, right? Like anytime we call like create
But
new entity, like the server provides it, right?
by virtue of us deep cloning, yeah.
I guess what I mean is like anytime we generate, anytime we call new entity, that is happening inside the server loop, right?
Technically though, I think nothing can even do that right now.
Oh
Except
yeah,
for
that's
maybe
true.
except for start play, which does start play. Yeah.
And who does start play? Does both the client and server start play?
No, it's only in the server update. We put this game running here, and we have
Oh, okay,
we have
yeah.
the condition that the server update needs to run once first before the client update, or else it all fails.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is fine.
It fails because we assume the player exists.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we assume that like if the game is running, the player exists, and it kind of falls apart without that.
Okay.
Um, so
Yeah, let's make it not. Let's basically what we're saying is let's not make this to do. Let's actually do it.
I think so.
Okay.
I think it'll be good to hand the messages back. So I'm gonna make a new server message class. Or yeah. Nope, not rename. New. Fine. Man, there's a really Control Option Apple H. There we go. There's a very obtuse shortcut to hide the zoom controls on your screen.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll hand it to Zoom. They do check out features pretty quickly.
Man, of all the companies that have done some pretty amazing pandemic ops, like Zoom, I'm very impressed. I'm very, very impressed.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I don't think that's that. So if we were going to get a message from the server, and maybe we can like issue bandwidth anything now because we can just send as much as we want and figure out how to compress it later. What do we think? Like, we at least want to have like entity created. Or is it like is game start even earlier, where it's like this comes in with everything?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wonder if the way to think about this, like everything going from client to server is very discrete and event driven. But I do wonder if, to use a database analogy, it's like the client sends queries to the server, right?
Oh,
but
I think I see
when
where
you
you're
kind
going
of
with
go the
this.
other direction, maybe you want the flattened state. When I say flattened, what I mean is like it's the whatever you apply all of those queries or those changes or events, and that gives you like a snapshot in time.
Yep. So maybe it's like you have a frame, and you have like just an entities array.
Yeah, and it's some kind of like serialization of that. And then I think what some games do is they have a notion of what they call delta compression, which is that like as long as you, the client, are like faithfully receiving our previous updates, we're only going to send you what changed. from the last
Yeah,
time
that's what I was
sent you
thinking.
something. Right. Oh, I see. And so there's two different. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say maybe this is an array of entity messages, which is an interface of like entity, and maybe it's like an entity is a partial entity.
Right.
And like some sort of like, yeah, I don't know, but something like that. Yeah. Or we could just apply it to the object with like
and by partial, that's the TypeScript construct partial, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Where like it basically it puts optional on every single property, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Where is there? I want
so fancy.
I want there to be a way where you can do like partial, but also always ID.
Right. Yeah. So, boy, there's so many different ways that we could go about this, and not in the good sense of that. There's like so many different ways, and the kind of like I don't know which one is worse than the other. Where I think the first thing that you suggested, which is like an entity creation message, would be like the lowest level thing that we could do, and basically it's a compressed message because you basically are assuming that the player will know how to consume that and then deterministically hydrate the state that's on the server based on that event, right?
Right, and it's sort of, it can hook into our make, wherever those are.
Yes. The question is like, can we encapsulate all of the state changes on the server side in terms of individual events like that? Like you moved somewhere, or you created a builder, or you shot something. Like at a certain point, it's going to transition from like it being much more efficient and compact to send those like low level events from server to client. But as soon as the state transitions get like I shouldn't say as soon as, like, I could see it getting so complicated. Like, there's so much variety in what can change that it crosses over to the territory. It's just easier to tell you at a high level what the values of things are and just, like, say, this is what it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess from like a database perspective, it's the difference between query-based replication and row-based replication in like a relational database. Either you replicate the statements or you replicate just like the values of the rows. And the question is like, does the server, the trade-off there is like, does the server apply enough complexity in terms of the statements that it has to basically use to mutate the data that like it becomes almost less efficient to like do that? Because we have to codify all those things, right? Basically, if we go through our systems and every time you modify state, you're going to have to codify that into a message that can be passed back to the, which may be fine.
Right. I think that sounds intense though. And it sounds like a lot of, it sounds like a pretty challenging set of things to codify.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about a partial version of that where the attack system bundles up a message to send to the damageable, and the damageable can figure out what to do with the message. So there's like system to system versions of that.
Yep.
However, what we're talking about is something a lot more generic, which is like, how do we get the server to tell the client what the current state is, right? And that has to encapsulate necessarily every single change in any value anywhere in the game.
This is reminding me that one of the challenges we faced in terms of like serializing this is that stuff like objects that are constructors versus objects that are data is really sort of throwing us for a loop here. Like if we wanted to send an entity's transform from the server to the client, we can't bundle up just data. We have to like see, oh, it's on key transform and like know to, run it through a constructor versus versus the fact that if it was just data, and I think if all of our objects became just data, like
you've convinced me. They should all just be data.
They should be data. Okay, great. Because I think it'll at least simplify really any of our whichever messaging strategy we pick.
Agreed.
So let's start with the transform because that'll fuck up everything.
Yes. Another option is that we have like transform internal data. like the class transform is like the internal data of the transform. That's the interface. Or it's just like in the component class, we have like a data object which points to the raw data. And then you pass that into the construct. That's an optional. That's one version of the constructor is passing that straight in, right?
Oh, I like that. Yep.
And that way we can preserve instance methods.
This is going to be a much cleaner conversion.
Okay. Yeah, I actually wasn't trying to make an argument for or against this pattern. I was just trying to provide it as like one possibility, right? So this dot data equals data, something like that, right?
Yeah. Oh.
Or clone.
Right. Nope.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do we clone or not? I would say not clone and let the client decide.
Yeah, I think so.
That is what our GL matrix library says, right? Like, let the client decide, and then it causes all kinds of bugs.
Yeah, and I was going to say, actually, our constructor is this dot data equals in this, and we want assignment.
Oh, okay. So you actually. Oh,
this is our current constructor. Yeah.
Oh, this is like create from nothing, and then you also want to be able to create it. Well, how do we do it on the? How do we create this object on the client side?
That's a good question. Yeah. Right, because I think actually on the client side, the very first thing we do is if we look in like make player.
Yeah. You dumb?
Yeah.
How much does it really matter that our components are classes?
None.
We have some helper methods, but not that many, right?
Oh, I think I'm trying to move us towards no classes here. But
I'm happy with that. I think I wasn't trying to convince us to go to like the wrapped data object. It could literally just be that these components are JSON, like their representation in JSON is 100% transparent. You just like JSON.stringify it, and then you're good to go. And there's a lot to recommend that.
I think holding onto the class now, though, and moving, like wrapping a data object, I think is the first step, because a bunch of our code still works. First of all,
yeah. So you're talking about like.
I think we move to this so that our server messages can, like, we'll see a transform object. We'll be like, we load that into transform. We just dump it into transform data.
Yeah.
Like maybe, so actually server message becomes, this is a data entity, and the interface for data entity is ID string, and then transform is a transform data object. And we probably need to export that, yeah. Because now I feel like we can actually like do a little more work around that.
And then, so let's say that, and the data entity is what you JSON stringify and send over to the right.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
At the bottom of this file, just scratch. Doesn't have to be, or it can be a new text file that doesn't have like ts.ts, so it's not yelling at us. Can we model how the two scenarios where the client is going to consume? The first scenario is that the client's entity manager has that entity ID and needs to take that data and do something with it. The second scenario is that the client's entity manager doesn't have that entity ID and needs to figure out what to do. We can model both of those scenarios. That'll help me get my head around this. Okay,
great. So let's, equals get server message.
Right.
For frame and, or really, no, get server message, and we have to figure out which frame it applied to. So then new message dot entities dot each. I'm writing Ruby. It looks like
that's fine.
Yeah. That's what I write all day. And then so
Ruby has like 25 to 33% less keystrokes than JavaScript, and like it really feels good, right?
I really like Ruby.
Yeah, I do too.
I really want typed Ruby. Typed Ruby, the magic. We just did a hack day project at work where someone tried to take our Rails app and add sorbet.
Okay.
It was hard. It didn't work.
Yeah. Getting off the ground is really difficult. I think
Yeah,
you
and
need to take
they
someone
had 2 full days to dedicate, and it still wasn't enough. So
I think it takes someone who like irrationally cares about it, but also is really good at executing, because it's very easy to just like go down a rabbit hole. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I would even qualify that description that I just had. Like,
yeah, man,
that would be fun as hell, though.
it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so for every ending our message, we find a client entity, and if there is one, we can do some stuff. And if there's not one, this is creation, this is update, and then it's I'll call this server entity.
Yeah.
Let's see, server entity. Really, it's object dot keys for the server entity dot each do key. This is just the most horrible bastard of a language ever written. So it's client entity dot, I don't know, client entity key dot set data, and maybe we add some helpers for this, but server entity key.
Yeah,
So everything,
some of those keys are plain old data, like our flags, and some of those keys are components that have a data field on it, right?
True. I wonder. It'd be really cool if we had like transform data on here, and if our transform like knew to look for that, because then we could just splat it in.
And then, okay, well, let's talk about creation. I think this is the one that gets a little bit tricky to me.
Yeah, well, this would be like, how do we find like make wall? We have our types, right? We have this.
How badly do we need to call the actual entity constructor here? We have all of the internal state, right?
I think so. Yeah.
So, and then entities, there's no subclass for entities. That might as well be final class entity, right? Like, there's no entity subclasses. Which means all we need to know is how to because we're in a model right now where our components are still classes and not interface. Which means we need to know which constructor to call to create those components.
Yeah, unless we got to pure data, in which case we could get away with this, which would be super good.
Yeah, and like if the entities were pure data as well, that would also be really awesome, right? Like,
and I think they are, because everything.
Entities have updates, right? Entities are a little bit heavier weight, but not by much, right? Actually, they have nothing. Entities are pure data.
They're pure data, and we've attached like the shooter component has an update, but we could pass the entity like. What it needs is the shooter data to run, right? Like we could, and the same for builder creator just has like, yeah, I think we could get away with it. And I think if we start with transform, yeah, so maybe we actually do start with like transform data. We'll call these data components in the future. Now, these are components in the next generation, obviously.
Yeah. Question mark.
Great. Yeah, it's optional, but it could be there.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, this gets well, no, not everything has a transform. So let's maybe go to player, and then e.transform data equals new. We're just e.transform.data.
What's the relationship between transform? Oh.
Wait, delete this. I think there is none. This is just a fast way to construct it.
And then are we going to start reading out of transform data in the future?
I think so. I think if we can make the player mover we can make the player mover server system read out of transform data, and maybe our map drawing stuff, we can actually like kind of get away with this today.
I see what you're getting at here.
Yeah. because we only have one system to fix, which is great.
What if, though, so this will be a good pattern for components that have methods on them, right? Does transform have any methods on it?
Transform has one method.
Oh, okay.
Which is the model world transform, which we use a bit of. We also, this could just take data, and I think we've actually written it in a way that just takes data elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, just to humor me, can we try typing out an alternative to this, which is export interface transform, where we just like go whole hog. We go straight into just like we do the surgery right now. And then what we would need to do is
that's it, right?
Supply two different functions. We need to export a couple different functions here.
Okay.
We need to export, yeah, exactly, that and the constructor. And it takes as its argument a transform.
Right. T data. I honestly already like this a lot more. So that's that.
And then we need to rename T.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
T is a bad name. Yeah. We'll just call it transform.
And then we need to make a make transform or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is just gives you the 0 value basically.
So that should be simple return.
Oh, that works?
Yeah.
Holy shit. That's awesome.
Yeah, this is the simple return of an object.
Yeah, and yeah, that's really cool.
So that's this component.
And then we just need to go through, and anytime we call new transform, we replace that with make transform. And anytime we call transform dot MW transform, we need to just do the version where it's not object oriented.
I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, right, because everything else is literally just calling into transform dot. Oh shit. Okay, yeah, you're right. This is a really easy conversion.
Yeah.
I think we can do this, and we'll check TypeScript in a second, but don't need this. Transform still a transform. There is no transform data. Oh, that's sick. Okay, so yeah.
The only problem is your IDE is not going to tell you where everything is, so you might want to run npm type check.
I will.
Or yarn run type check or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just going to do all the new transforms because I think this is actually.
Yeah.
And I want to do it. I want to do it by hand because it'll do the update.
Yeah.
Or the import correctly. But great call.
I actually kind of like languages where there's no such thing as new, because new is a function call, but TypeScript's not going to let you do the statically transform new class name into a function call, because it doesn't actually treat it like a function. It's like a special keyword.
Yeah, it is a function call, right? Maybe I'll take it a step further. I don't like languages with constructors. Or like, I don't like using constructors. Like, I would like to write a convenience method that says like I kind of like the Objective-C and Swift style where you write a constructor that is like super deeply named and then you call it by name. And it just works. Okay, cool. The game. Okay, so let's see. I bet everything. Let's see what's happening with model transform. It's not that. Here we go. So this is actually
MW transform of that.
And this should come from. Yep. From entities.
I think it's components.
Components? Yeah, you're right. Okay. So that's that.
Oh wow, that friggin' worked! Holy shit!
Because the other places we use model transformers actually, like, I don't know, we wrote it.
They're intermediate variable name.
Yeah. which maybe makes me want to rename this function, but because
yeah, I
honestly, this is the only place that we use the transforms model transform.
It almost recommends not.
Yep.
I get it though. I get it why it's there.
Oh, because this is the renderable modelable transform, which is just a totally different thing. Yeah. Okay. That's that.
We will need to invent a pattern for exactly what we like. How do we make sure the names of utility functions that manipulate component data don't namespace clash with each other? So
yeah, let's rename the symbol over here, which is it like
transform to MW? Or, I don't really know. Like the other thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like prefix, like having the prefix be the class or the interface type, right? Like transform to. Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous, exactly. But also
the other thing correct. We could do is that when we import, we import the whole module rather than individual functions in it, and that would allow us to like always say transform.mw, transform.make, right? Like the pattern would be that you treat this whole thing as a library.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we need. We're about to have an I transform again. Is what's going to happen. What would you call this?
Well, you could just export. You just do what you're doing right now, but just change what you're doing for imports, right? The imports could just be import star as transform from this file, and then what you do is you do like transform dot capital T transform, transform dot make, and transform dot MW or something like that, right? That's the alternative way that you could do that.
I guess I could also do this because I'm not a huge fan of star.
Interesting. Okay. But don't we have a lint against default exports? Does that exist?
So. It does, but it's working.
Okay.
But then I like that this becomes like if you grab the default, you get transform dot.
Yeah. I confess to preferring lowercase
star?
t or let's call it like lowercase t, not star, but like capital T to me means the interface and not library.
Oh, that's very fair. Yeah.
And
I guess maybe what's weird about this is that like I mean I remember exactly why I dislike default interfaces. Because this is obtuse. So let's use star as if we're going to do this.
Yeah, and I'm not going to insist that we do it this way, but that's one technique. The other thing we could do, and this may be too far down one direction, is inside the transformer.ts file, we create a class, a final class that's called util. And therefore you can import util. It's just basically like another layer of namespacing, basically. And you can export this and then make those two static functions. That's another way to do it.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah. So you have to use the transform util. Yeah.
But then you would still have to. You would still have to like rename the import. Otherwise, we run back into the namespace collision problem. Because like if every component had util, you'd have to like name it something, right?
Yep. Yeah, I let's start with star, but I do think
okay.
I'm digging the util pattern.
Yeah.
And I changed this to like I like actually that we can sort of get away with this, and I think this is
just make,
which
we can do rename simple there, and that'll do it.
I actually like make transform because I feel like we'll have the function make everywhere. Well, it'll actually rename simple correctly, won't it? That's fine.
Yeah, and and if we do this, I agree with you that we shouldn't do this unless the pattern is the import star, right? Like
yeah.
And I know you don't like import star, but I think like what this pattern is for, it's the way that we in my opinion should probably use Lodash is like we always do underscore dot. I don't know if there's runtime cost in that. I literally don't. There must be, right? There has to be some runtime cost to importing everything as opposed.
On the Lodash side, there definitely is, because it'll tree shake the modules out. For us, probably not, because you can't tree shake any of the game out of the game.
I see. Yes. Right.
And Lodash isn't the problem. It's like Babel, that's the problem, or whatever. Like, if you want to get rid of half of React that you're using, so yeah, that's fine. I think it's fine. I'm going to find replace this.
So
yeah.
I don't necessarily think we need to stress out too much about either one of these issues, but
nah.
Yeah.
And then we'll do, if we have a space make transform, we'll turn it into space transform dot make transform. Oops. And the find and replace in VS Code is only barely functional. Cool. And now we can rename the symbol, and let's try it with make, because this will be.
I think it's going to look pretty good. And what we've done is we've kind of reinvented essentially the way Go and Rust do classes, where there's no constructor, you just like write a function.
I like that a lot. I mean, our transforms are there, and now we could splat data into our entities. Like, that's great. I'm extremely into this. So maybe let's. Oh, great. So this is actually just a transform. And transform. This really is. It's weird. This is the place where I want to see this as an interface.
I'm happy to call that iTransform, because that'll distinguish it from.
Yep. Okay. Let's do it.
Yeah. I don't really care. Like, if you feel one way or the other, we can mess around with it.
That's since it's just a symbol rename, like, that's super easy.
Yeah, I would say I think the one thing that I would say about this is I wouldn't want to call the file transform.ts anymore. I would like to call it like lowercase t, because there's yeah,
absolutely.
Which is going to be fun to deal with in Git. Enjoy.
Is it
on Mac OS? Yeah.
Oh, is it not going to detect it? Oh, fuck.
It's cool.
Really?
I think the way that you could do this is you can do 2 commits, 1 commit.
You have to do a git rename, right?
You can do a git rename.
Or git move? Yeah, git move. I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Because I will forget that this is the problem later, and it'll be very confusing.
It's one of those weird things.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oops.
Nice.
That's fine. Cool.
And hopefully on the pull side or the fetch side, it'll just know what to do. We'll see what happens.
I think since it's a git rename, file rename will happen. It's just that macOS was not going to tell Git that this was a file change, because case insensitivity.
Yeah.
Cool. So I like this a lot. That's really cool. Okay, so let's go back to the pseudocode. Our client entity is, our update becomes client entity, or sorry, it's like object.update, object.assign, that client entity, server entity. That's it. That should be the whole thing, which is really nice.
As long as entities are not classes, which they currently still are, right?
No, entities are not classes. Remember, entities are. Oh, you can still object.assign, can't you?
You can't do the assign the way that you're doing it right now. You could do it with no curly braces in the front, and that'll do it. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
All
right, because it won't give you a new object, which is fine. We don't need a new object.
Now, I bet TypeScript will complain about that, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm willing to try. This feels cool though.
Yes. I already thought of a problem. Line 26.
Yeah.
The problem is that we do use object-oriented programming in a really important way for rendering.
Okay.
So if you go to make player,
Let's make player. Huh? Oops. What about the actual function? Is it this player renderable
yes,
stuff?
that is the thing that is going to really be bad.
Now, here's
Because
what's interesting. I never expect new renderables from the server.
you don't expect new renderables, but you at least need to know when you create the entity which renderable to assign to the client version of it, right?
Yes, I agree. And I was thinking, if we get maybe it's this.
Yeah, totally. We just need a factory, right? We need
yeah.
And that's the entity type. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally. Totally.
If it's new, if we don't see it, we can call into our EntityFactory, which is our type definition. So really, this is type definitions of server entity.type, and our function should maybe take a data entity object as an argument.
Yeah, I like that. And then this could be bad. It could be good. I could imagine that the data that the map editor could eventually encode approaches what the server message looks like. I'm not 100% sure if they should be the same thing, but like you could get to that level of flexibility.
That seems plausible. Yeah. Yeah, and it's also nice because I can definitely see how it'll be nice, because I think if this can be extremely partial. Maybe this starts to be optional for data entities, because like we only send transform if it change. Like we don't need to send the transform for the trees. If there's stuff like health, that's also an optional number and stuff.
And so data entity is going to be some subset of entity, right? It's like some subset of the key.
Right. It'll never have
renderable stuff.
Yeah. So object.assign is probably overly simplistic here, but I think it's basically take a known subset and assign it to the superset that is the client entity. So maybe we have to write a function for that.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I could even imagine just literally us writing out like every single property, like a dot property x equals b dot property x, and it'll even assign the undefines, right? And it'll do the right thing in that sense.
It'll do if we assign the undefines. Like if there's no transform, we don't want to delete the transform.
What is the difference between, let's say you have an object in JavaScript, and maybe we can try this out in like the node interpreter. If you do, let's say your object is called x, and you say x dot foobar equals undefined. Does x have the key foobar, or does it not?
That's a great question. Yeah, this is the node interpreter, but
yeah, it should have the same semantics.
I sure hope so. Oh, you know what? I'll.
Yeah, thank you very much. You are prescient. I was about to ask you for that.
Oh yeah, totally. So we're saying x and like object.keys x. If we say x.foobar is undefined, we've created a key. And if x.foobar is 1, we definitely don't want to. There's no splat, yeah. But object.assign exists.
Object.assign will do the right thing. It's like kind of like hilariously not type safe, but I think that.
Well, is the right thing, I guess. So in this case, if a data entity didn't have transform, there would be no data entity.transform is undefined property on the object. It would be like, it's weird. The specifying undefined is different than.
Yeah, it sucks.
Like this is also undefined, but X does not have foobar 2.
Yeah, agreed. So
Yeah.
I think the only reason I was getting at that is like if we make a function that copies a data entity into another entity, what we really want is like a bunch of code that's like if the data entity has this property, real entity dot property equals data entity dot property. If the data entity has property 2, then real entity dot property 2 equals, like it's just
Yep.
boilerplate, right? Like it
Yep.
sucks,
Totally.
but like ultimately it's finite, right? It's never going to be like
Yeah. Or we could also do something like x or entity dot trans.
Oh, and by the way, object.assign should just work for exactly what I'm talking about. I think that
I think so because there won't be explicitly undefined properties.
yes, exactly. The only reason why I even mention this is if TypeScript doesn't like object.assign for whatever reason.
I was going to say this is also totally valid without any check, and it will do the right thing.
You need to do ... server.
Oh yeah, sorry, but yeah.
Oh yeah, let's just do that. That's the
right because that's just a merge.
Yeah, and that is type safe. It'll know.
Yeah, that should be perfectly type safe because the transform is the same type.
Wonderful. ES6 to the rescue, or ES7. I don't know what that. Whatever.
I don't know where splats are in the language and when we get to use them for real. Frankly, it's bizarre. Okay. Yeah, I feel good about this.
Yeah.
Okay, then. So let's go back to the game. And this we're going to take out, which means that the client can do nothing. Or maybe if I set this to, this is still, it's going to lack a player, so it's just going to crash, right? Yeah. Okay. So maybe the first thing to do is to enqueue a server message.
Yep. And do we need more? We need more than just a transform. There are flags and things that also get set on the player that also need to go over the wire as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Because this make function knows what to do.
Let's let the make function take everything and accept a data entity object, and this will just be where we pipe in server state. And like as we add more to this, we can have more that's coordinated.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see. So we have our client message queue. I think we also have a server message queue.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
So as we organize this stuff, maybe we might want to put some new line separation between stuff that we know is going to be on the server versus stuff that we know the client.
Okay. Let's see.
So the client has, confusingly, a client entity manager, but a server message queue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the server message queue, the client message queue goes with the line 55 entity. Which, should we rename that symbol to server entities or server entity manager, maybe?
Let's do that because
it'll help us going forward.
It'll help us. Server entity manager.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is just every system, but that's fine.
Yeah. I think if we just save everything, it should...
Can I do save all?
Yeah.
Since when? That's great.
What? You didn't know that? Command Alt S. Classic.
No, I had no idea. Okay. Where's close? I want to close all editors.
I right click on the tab. Okay, that works too.
Right click on. Oh man, cool. Apple K, Apple W. What is this? Is there a double shortcut? There is. Whoa. Okay, cool. I'm learning.
That used to be called the Apple button, right? Open Apple. Was there closed Apple? There was closed Apple, right?
Closed Apple button. I don't know, man. I remember Open Apple. Hang on, I want to see an old keyboard picture right now. Apple was not right about the headphone jack. Give me back my headphone jacks. Command. Holy cow.
Oh, Macworld.
My ad blocker is clearly paused. Probably because I wanted to watch something on YouTube. Come on, uBlock. Jeff, do you have a good ad blocker?
I use Firefox, and I think I use uBlock in Firefox. I'm not sure what OpenApple, but we specified OpenApple, like we had that qualifier because we're trying to do it in contrast with something else, right?
Ah, wow. OpenApple is much before my time. That's fascinating.
Why did they do?
Who would do
like,
this?
Because to me, OpenApple and ClosedApple seem like folk language. It seems like they like that convention was not how they meant for it to be. But
I mean, maybe, right?
maybe they just assumed it would be purely graphical. It's terrible.
Oh wow, look at that. Look at that. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, and like the idea of that is awful, right? Because like people aren't going to know. Like people are going to see that. Like you could see a ClosedApple icon on the screen, and you would think that they were talking about the OpenApple, right?
Wow, yeah.
And that's probably why they got rid of it. They realized.
That's amazing. I've never used a computer with OpenApple and ClosedApple. I was gonna say, oh, famously, this is probably a folklore.org story. Yeah. Oh, here you go. There are too many apples on the screen. It's ridiculous.
Steve Jobs.
You know what? He was a crypto fascist, but he was a good UX designer.
Yeah.
Server message queue. Oh wait, no. This goes with the client entity manager, and the client message queue goes with the server entity manager. Yeah. I think emitters also go with the client entity manager.
Yeah. And eventually this becomes two different games, client game and server game, right? Eventually.
Yep. Yeah, oh boy. Honestly, I feel like let's do shared data.
Yep.
Should be nothing eventually.
The renderer is client side. Unless we want to render on the server. I don't know. Like, will we ever render on the server?
That's I hope not, but also
I think if we ever do like massive League of Legends style championships, we'd probably want to render off the server.
Oh,
that's a problem we will solve when we get there.
Yeah, goodness. Someday.
Yeah.
So we can actually, while we're doing this, we can say the camera, keyboard, and mouse all go to the
agreed.
Player input state probably also is client side.
Yep.
And were you saying the renderer is, of course, on the client?
Yep.
Cool. That's a good start. And then the rest of this definitely enable DebugDraw can hang out with the renderer. Cool.
DebugDraw is fascinating, right? Because I actually kind of shudder to think how we're going to implement that. Because DebugDraw, like, depending on how much prediction we do, like the client might not have enough state to do DebugDraw, right? Like if like like is the client side doing Dijkstra, right? Like it might not be. It kind of has to though if we want to predict motion of the builder. Like if we want to predict, it probably needs to predict the path as well.
I think so. I think it would. Yeah, it needs to at least like, and maybe it makes an attempt at the path. Like it's like we're gonna try to do this path. You can't only do a path like in 5 steps though.
Yeah,
it'd be weird if it went out to something that was unpathable and then step backwards. So yeah,
I think eventually our DebugDraw is going to have to assume a reliable, fast data pipe that doesn't follow the rules of our client server separation, where we're like assuming latency and stuff like that. And that way we should be able to render on the client side both what the client's version of the truth is, but also the server's version. That's actually a really awesome use of DebugDraw. Is like, show me what the server currently thinks the state is in a silhouette or something like that, right?
That'll be cool. Yeah, we'll be able to watch prediction happen forward and see like a silhouette chunkily move forward. Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Basically, the server, once it's an actual separate process, will basically have another port that's open, and you just assume that the traffic between that port and the client side is super fast, right? Because that's debug, right? That debug, you have to assume like extraordinary circumstances.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. Yeah. Neat. Okay, so I had a thought,
Yes.
which is we're going to start a new server message at the beginning of every frame.
Okay.
And our server, so we can definitely start it with the frame is frame.
And we call it server snapshot.
Sure. I was going to say I was going to try to do the diff though. I was going to say.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah. Follow me through on this one because I was going to in start play.
Yep, I'm into it.
Yeah, like we're going to feed the entities in, and then we're only going to add entities in the tank mover when they change.
Yeah.
Cool. And then the very end of that's where we're going to update. And then we say this dot server message queue dot push, and then server message. This is actually going to look very familiar on the client side as well. Cool. And yeah, this might suck.
Are you talking about the game state?
Just dropping this into start play might be murder, but let's find out.
Game state may be something that we do. Maybe we make an entity for game state, right? Or we make a component that is a singleton component that, like, I didn't want to do this before, but because I was yeah, go ahead.
I was going to let the server. I was going to let game state sit. I was just thinking that like having start play send a message. Start play needs to add to the server message. Really, this is server state, and this is a server message.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is game state probably does need to become an entity that gets updated in a similar way.
Yeah, I think the larger point is that there's going to be like ambient global state that's going to need to be synchronized between the server and client at some point, and in those cases, we can't be too literal about what entity means. Like entity doesn't mean like a physical character running around on the screen. It means a piece of state that bundles components that is involved in the ECS system, and or the ECS mechanism that we've created. And like already, I can already see the way that like if we use components and entities as our units of synchronization, it'll be useful to express all this like meta global stuff as components and entities for that for the purposes of.
Yeah, and I was actually really enjoying in GameMaker, they let you set some objects as global.
Yes.
Or some objects are singleton. So like our game state is actually a singleton object that when we toss out an entity manager, like we toss out the current levels entities, not the global singleton entities, so that we can continue to like this operates across levels or across like bigger state changes.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense to have like these sort of They'll be the entities without transforms, which have not existed yet, but we very importantly made it not required this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, if we're to take the Redux metaphor that you brought up, it's basically just Redux is a state tree. It doesn't really have it doesn't really have a notion of what you're using that state for. It's that your application can determine that, but like the bones and architecture don't care.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's see. So this is server state dot entities dot push. And this is going to be a new data entity that is ID is entity.id. Our type is, God. Oh wait, we've got type in here somewhere. Oh, it's entity type, great. And our transform is entity.transform. That it?
Yeah, so this is doing something slightly different than I thought we were doing, but that's okay.
Okay.
How are we going to handle synchronizing positions?
Well, so right now only one thing can move, but so this is set up, and then in the player in the tank mover, we're going to write a server message that just has the entity ID, the type, and the transform.
Got it. Okay, so the pattern right now is anytime something changes, we're going to enqueue a server message.
Stick it in there, yeah. Okay. And I think entity ID and type are required. Type maybe could be optional. That can be optional. Yeah, you need type for creation, and that's it. And then like transform is all we have now. But if it's like health and thing doesn't move, we'll only enqueue like a health delta.
Yeah.
Yeah. But why is this type of? It's not assignable to type entity message. Oh. I think this is just one level of indirection too high. Great. Yeah, so we just have a series of entity diffs. Cool. And then so in the game player update, let's see. So many functions. Hang on, I would actually like to split my panes. We know this is too much. Here we go, client update. And then server update. Yeah, I wanted to look at how we got our messages. Where do we read client messages here? Do we? Oh, the tank mover reads it.
Yep. Each system reads the message as they need.
Okay.
But the semantics are different though, right? Like
yeah. The client update, every message is a sync basically. So we could write a sync system. Like, how does that sound to you?
What do you mean by sync?
Like, it's a client system that reads server messages and does all the splatting into objects. So it's really systems.sync with server, right? And then it pulls the current message for the frame off the server message queue. Like, this is maybe where prediction would happen, or like step back prediction to step forward to do like replay over the server state.
Mm-hmm.
But I was about to write a function that just looped over all entities in the server message and created them. But actually it's this, right? We just do this the start of every frame with a server message if we can.
Yeah, I think we're right now. The way that the client message queue and the server message queue are like completely different, which is fine. That's not a problem I'm identifying. I'm just like I'm trying to highlight the contrast.
Yeah.
Where the client messages are semantic. They are database query.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the server messages going to the client are essentially row replication. They are like, here's the state.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's a little bit confusing to me that we push a message in the creation, whereas like I actually think that where that makes a little bit more sense to me is like at the end of the server loop, we just enqueue all of the entities.
Well, we do, right? Server update, like we take at every server update function, we make a new message, and then we enqueue it at the end
for every single entity.
For every server update.
Oh, for every server update. Yeah, okay, got it.
Start play just happens to be a thing that takes a server message and says like, we've got all the entities, let's enqueue it. And I guess the other one that's going to take it is tank mover. I guess I see what's maybe feeling weird is that everything has to actually take a server message now if we want to do deltas.
Well, we can do deltas differently, right? The other way that you do deltas is you basically have a notion of what your previous frame was at a data level. So essentially you're copying the server state. Mm-hmm. You have the previous thing and it's like a completely separate thing, which is fine because it's all interfaces, right? And then you have what's new and you literally do like you do the shadow DOM diff thing.
Interesting.
Thing. Mm-hmm. And I actually kind of think that's the way. Well, I don't actually know. Like, I think I know.
No, I see what you're saying though, because in fact, zero systems need to know about this because we will just say like, what was the previous frame state? What is the current frame state? We send the client everything that changed, and that's a pure data operation. Okay.
Right.
I like that.
And I would say if we wanted to not do what I just said, and we wanted to have like every time a system on the server touches a piece of state, enqueue a little delta message, we would just put that on the game. You wouldn't like at that point, like maybe it'd be like don't pass it into the server anymore because we're passing the game to most systems anyways.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, but right, we would say game.next server message or something.
Yeah.
Yep. I like the idea of I like the session a lot of sort of having this universal diffing because it's actually really like as we do systems, everything gets easier.
Yeah.
We don't have to like we won't have bugs where we forget to send a message.
Yep.
There will be no state change that is not handed to the client. So I think that's a win.
Yeah. And I think the trade-off there, the one that's in the back of our heads is like, is that expensive to like run a server-side diff between state? But I think we have to assume that needs to be fast because we need to be able to like have like we're going to be doing time travel all over the place if we do anything close to what that like Overwatch video was doing, right? Like they would literally take a snapshot of like server state 10 frames in the past and replay player input over it, right? So like even the game loop simulation needs like pretty friggin' fast. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is okay then, because if we do a deep copy, I'm not concerned.
Yeah.
And I think this actually gets better as we move away from classes and into more interfaces. I have a thought, which is that these really should be numbers, huh? Like we don't want to store anything as a vec2. How does that sit with you?
I know exactly what you're talking, because a vec2,
it's not copyable, or it's copied by reference, and we end up in this weird like, and it's harder to diff.
You're saying when we rehydrate from JSON, it's not going to be a vec2 anymore. It's going to be, because vec2 is a class.
Right. Though I think if you stick a number in the place of vec2, it does seem to work, only because of how the geomatrix operations are, where you have to like call it on their class instead of. I think you can rehydrate with a number and it works, but it's a fluke of vec2.
It's a fluke, and I think what happens is you don't get the same performance benefit. Because like under the hood, it's like a slightly different array, right? Like I think when you rehydrate from JSON as a like just a number, then it's like a full-on array that happens to have two floats in it. Whereas if you create it to the vec2 constructor, it is a float 32 array, right? And that's different. Like a float 32 array in the runtime is different than like a generic array that has two floats in it.
Yep.
TypeScript won't care, but I know what you're getting at.
Just in terms of like, I feel like it's maybe as much for us as for the game.
Although, what does it actually do? Like, I remember because the map editor cares about this, right? The map editor has this exact same problem. Like when you serialize when you serialize something that has vec2s in the map editor, probably where this will be interesting is like we can look at where the deserialization happens. So I think that's under map.ts in the game.
Okay.
Wherever we like read the map, I don't remember where that was. Potentially terrain, like wherever we load stuff.
Yeah, that's where do we load stuff? I think it's actually in map interfaces.
Oh shit.
It's okay.
We do from raw, right? There's some raw map. We do some conversion there. There it is. Line 49, is it? No, that's not it. I'm sorry.
No, I see convert to vec2, and convert
Okay,
is
that's it. Yeah.
util convert. Yeah, and raw vec2 is our, oh, it's because you get this type, which does work, and I think you can pass it in as a vec2, correct? But that's still very weird. Yeah.
So if we use vec2 in our components, it means we'll have to create a serialization and or at least at very least a deserialization function in the component that says it's basically a different constructor, right? It's like rather than construct into nothing, make another constructor that takes the raw sort of DJSONified like representation and turn it into the interface. Yeah, which gets us back into like this could have been a class, right? Which is okay.
Like it could have been a class. Yeah. I think we can make that the duty of this like parse the server state.
Yeah. Okay.
Function. So we've got the previous frame as a deep clone of the entity manager before our updates. And now our server message is the current frame and about to be a diff of that, essentially.
Yeah.
We need to do like diff entities, this dot server entity manager dot entities pre-frame.
Right. I'm trying to think here. Is the diff is complicated.
Yeah, which is why it's about to get its own file.
So I think the diff is interesting. The one thing I will point out is that it's an optimization, and it may be something that we don't need to necessarily dive into right away. Like we could just send the whole snapshot up front for every frame, and just because we don't have an issue. However, if we do want to solve the diff problems, we need to be able to distinguish between partial entities and full entity. And maybe our that sync function will just do it, right? Like
we don't. Sorry, the diff here is from the previous state, from the previous frame on the server to the new frame on the server. So nothing should be partial. We should have full entities, and we should be able to see. Like we should do like a comparison of each one.
No, well, it'll be partial in the sense that what gets sent to the client necessarily is like piecemeal, right? Like you'll get like entity by entity. Some entities won't even be in the client state by the time it gets the server message, because like there's like stuff that got created that the client just didn't know about. But then for entities that the client does know about, you only want to send the stuff that has changed since the last snapshot that you delivered to the client. And in that regard,
so
those are different. Those are different messages, right? It's like I would say it's a different message to say this is new versus I sent this to you before, and you need to like just apply this delta. And I think that they are different things.
Okay.
So data entity, maybe your construction here is correct, as long as it's like optional for every single, right?
Except for ID.
Yes.
Yeah, and there might be like.
Oh, yeah. This is what you were saying about like we want partial of entity except for the ID. That's what you were getting at before.
Well, and perhaps there's also like maybe a specific thing to this, which is an unregister. Which if the server says, "Hey, unregister this thing," like then the client can be like, "Okay, I can throw it away," and there's not maybe another way to do that safely. I don't know. Maybe
I see what you mean, right? Because like you need a way for the server to tell the client that something is, if you are doing diffs, right? Because if you or the diff could be some way of notating that, whether it's a flag or if it's just like the ID is in the array but the thing on the other side is empty, or like I don't really know.
Yeah, so maybe let's, instead of diff entities, and we can have previous as an optimization here, but let's convert to server message.
Yeah.
And at least start going down that path. So we don't need previous. And we'll just say current dot map. Let's see. Too many intermediate
This is
files.
a deep clone, basically.
It's a deep clone with some modifications, right?
Oh, I see.
Really?
Because we want them to be data entities going over there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and this will be a data entity array.
So,
heck are you? Yeah.
Just a question for my own. Why can't it be just a regular edit?
Why can't it be just? I mean,
is it because we're not trying to send all this? Not all the state is relevant.
I was thinking that we want to be sending specific state at least, and the only thing our server can update right now is the transform. And I guess I was thinking that
Totally
as we sort of deal with it, we'll update. We'll choose what we want to update, right? Yeah. But your question is a really good one.
Yeah. What about affiliations and that sort of thing? Like what team you're on, all those things.
Oh, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is going to end up in here, but
we're not doing teams right now anyway yet.
Right, we're only doing
we're only doing positioning. Yeah, okay, totally.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah. And I think that I think doing the simple thing where we just send every entity's transform an ID every time is great. Okay, cool. I wanted to figure out what is entities. Yeah, this is a key string. These are by IDs. Oops. Entity. And we get a data entity array out the other side.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, chill out. So we'll return, I'm mapping, I'm gonna underscore.map because that's the better one, which hands you value key. So we get ID as key, type is, I really don't know, and transform is value.transform. I'm not sure how to say type here. That's unfortunate.
We should probably clone the transform.
Yep, that makes sense. There we go. Give me Lodash. Did I forget to? I did not export data entity. Cool. That's what it's unhappy about. Oh, hello. So I can make this like type player. Let's just see if that fixes it real quick.
Or it'd be entity type. It'd be type.player or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. It's interesting that the entity we can't introspect this from an entity itself right now, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I think it didn't matter at one point, right? And it was actually nice that it didn't matter. It was nice that like all the type was just like something you needed for map editor to game. But now we need server to client, and that means that every entity has to have a type. Which means that we should probably just put it as an entity's property, right? Next to the ID, it should be a type. Yeah.
This is kind of core to just dealing with it, right? Yeah. This is entities types.
And the thing that it solves is construction. And that's it.
Basically, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Which is why I thought type is optional on the server message.
Right.
Because you don't need it most of the time.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Let's go to make player. Let's go to our make functions. And really, these are the only ones that can make right now, so we'll just start there. Oops. This is e.type. Does new entity is this just generating a UID? It is. That's great. equals type dot player. Man. Entities. Copy that, that's for sure. And b dot type equals type dot turret.
And there's types that don't exist yet, right? Like I don't think like the builder type doesn't exist.
Like builders and bullets, yeah. Which is, definitely it's an interesting question. I think builder probably does exist, and maybe bullet doesn't.
Yeah.
Got our nada. I love our nada. And no, it's interesting. Stuff like drops, like wood doesn't exist, but we do need to be able to like drop a chunk of wood somewhere. This is a tree.
And the only reason we're doing this is because we have polymorphic renderers, right?
The only reason we're doing this
is because we need to know on the client side what renderable to assign to it, right?
Really what constructor to run, right? It's beyond just renderables. It's like we actually set it up with like turret, wall has a wall collider.
Yeah, but all that stuff can be in the server message, right?
Fuck, you're right. Yeah, so really type is like model. It could be a model key, which would actually clean this up a bit eventually.
I'm okay with how we're going about it. It's just that like I think what you were saying before, I was just listening to like the litany of things you were saying before, and I was like, oh dang, this is a problem, right? Like the fact that like walls are an entity type right now, but like maybe it's fine. Maybe we do need to have this. Like I'm just trying to, like the idealistic piece of my brain is like trying to see if we can hold on to the idea that like we don't have to have this, and that like entities are allowed to be whatever they want, and like you're not just one thing. We contain multitudes. You know what I mean?
Totally. Well, let me paint a picture for you, which is when we call this function, I think as we read from the server message, I think we should delete this transform make and stick it in the server message parser or whatever. Because this data should come from, like, we'll just splat it in. We don't need to ever construct one. And perhaps the end game is that all of this comes from server message. We have no more individual constructors because we don't need it. And I agree that we don't need it. The only thing we need right now is to be able to,
because at the end of the day, that line 36 is what that type is basically.
It's 36. It's I think it's hitbox stuff too. It's knowing that like the thing is a square, and the server doesn't really need to tell us that. Like we know the thing is a square. In terms of like collisions. So like I think there's some,
but that's an optimization, some way to key into right? It. Yeah. Like the fact that we know that it's a square ahead of time is pure optimization, but like the server could tell us that.
That's a great point.
Despite the lack of efficiency. However, the server needs to tell us what renderable is. Maybe type is fine. Let's just keep going with this. I'm just like
let's hold on to it, but okay. I think I'm going to take the transform out of our constructors, and then I think we'll maybe see the future of not having many constructors.
Yeah.
I hope. Okay.
If we take it out of the constructor, the only issue is that anything that like creates an entity elsewhere is going to have to create it. So like when we create a bullet, or when we create a pickup somewhere, like
right, we have a make pickup function, don't we? No.
I mean, we have this problem kind of all over the place where we'll call make pickup and then we will set other properties on it. I don't think we have a precedent where somebody external creates components on entity. I don't think that exists yet. Which might be something we eventually want to do, but we currently don't do that. And that includes the transform, obviously.
Right. queue server state for the client. Okay, let's see. This that's easy to reconstruct.
I feel like I keep interrupting your flow here. I think we should just keep pressing forward with this stuff and see.
It's okay. I mean, like you're raising all the right questions, and we sure have a lot of them.
Yeah.
I'm going to make our first client system, which is sync with server, or sync server state, maybe.
Okay.
Because I think that's what this is, and it's also a nice, it'll be a nice sync server state point to fork these folders.
Right.
Oh, I don't export and update. That's fine. Delightful. And then in the game, we do want the frame because we want our. Do we want the frame or do we want just the message? Well, let's do it. I think if we have multiple server messages from the past, should we process them in order? Like if we're on frame 5 and we see, so this is interesting because we're going to be on frame 5, we suddenly get server frame 0. And I think we process everything less than our frame instead of just the current frame, which the server does. Does that make sense?
We would, as long as, like, unless you see snapshots in there, and it remains to be seen if there's, I don't think we'll ever have full snapshots. I think you're right. Let's do every frame. That's the simplest possible thing we can do right now. It's like just like I don't care if this is redundant. Just do every single frame.
Yeah. So like every message less than our current frame, do it in order, and apply it. And yeah, this is gonna be interesting because we're going to jump our tank backwards motion wise. I think. Oh no, we're not.
We're not doing any prediction right now. So you're never.
There's no prediction.
Yeah.
It'll just be 5 frames behind at all times. That's great. Cool.
And I think the problem that you're talking about of the tank jumping backwards, I think it's the job of prediction to prevent that from happening, right? Like it's the job of prediction to not only make input feel snappy, but also to or it's a job of reconciliation rather to figure out how not to make that jerky.
Yeah. So I can sort of see the client game loop, in the future becoming like, it's like, cache current state to frame, or actually really this is the last one. So cache frame state, like get server messages up to now, predict, that's this, apply previous predictions, predict next input. Like that feels like the missing 4 systems around this loop, maybe. So that'll be fun. We got a lot to do.
This is gonna be great. I have to say, emotionally, this has gotten to the point where like I'm starting to feel a little bit of problem stress. Not stress in the like any like truly like meta life anxiety sense, but it's like problem stress where it's like, oh, I don't know what the answer is, but it's also like a lot of fun. Like it's a lot of fun to like have the unknown out there, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm actually, so far this has been like I found this very unstressful because I'm just like, there's just so much to unwind to get back to it, but I can kind of see how this works.
Yeah, so maybe stress is the wrong word of what I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah,
it's more that like because there's lots of gears turning that like, and I'm like I don't have the answer yet.
Yeah, I also really I'm gonna stick this up here. I don't know, data. Classes. I feel like I see there's like a lot to do to just like mechanically unwind these files, and I look forward to that.
Yeah, the whole thing with the vec2s. Maybe
realize I don't know what to do.
I like it made me realize that like the distinction between interfaces and classes are actually not as interesting anymore, because we may still have to do some like boilerplate type conversion from raw unserialized JSON blob stuff into objects, and vec2 is an example of that, right? Yeah,
though I do appreciate, like, I think there's a whole lot of stuff that's like sort of mentally on the object. Like
Yeah.
the player has a spawn builders function where it's like, actually, like this should, maybe it should take the source object as well. Like we don't actually need to know about the player, or it doesn't need to know like that it's attached to something.
Yeah.
I just like the move. I feel like everything is more, everything as an entity gets a lot easier when there's not a bunch of like classes attached to it.
I totally agree.
That's at least my mental model.
I totally agree. And then, so I mean, this is an interesting thing we could do, is we didn't model renderables as a system. And this may solve our creation problem, sort of. Like, I think you were actually hinting at this. Like, maybe you put a model name. Or you put a renderable name, and there's a renderable system that switches off of that, and then just has like a big list of different things that it can.
Yeah, and then the thing we define, if we want like the turret to move independently, is like we have a renderable class that knows to look, that like it's like, cool, like I'm the renderable class for this renderable type, and like I can go and choose to like watch the mouse or something.
Yeah,
and it becomes pure visual stuff, which is nice.
Yeah, or the renderable object it looks a little bit like our primitives, where it's like a union type of any of the number of these blobs of parameters. And then the renderable system basically can switch off of that tag, take that blob of data that's specific to that tag, and then do whatever its logic is supposed to be.
Yeah. I think we can do it.
Yeah, I think we can do it. And then obviously we won't be sending the entire model over the wire. Rather than have like the model referenced in there, it'll just have the name of the model, and we'll pull the models off of the asset database, right? It's like as a foreign key into the assets database that that doesn't exist yet, but like it'll be that way. Everything is a relational database. That's what it's coming down to, I think.
It sure feels that way, which is fine, actually.
Yeah, it's fine.
Let's see. So our entity type. This has this is what I want. Give me that. Because this is the only way to get our constructors out of this, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
That's our factory right now.
That's our factory. Yeah, so let me actually see if we can do not a diff, but at least a because we can't construct objects every time. That will fail because we'll start reinitializing things. No, that won't. We could reconstruct it every frame, but we
don't have to reconstruct. We can see if the ID already exists in the entity manager.
I was going to say that's an optimization.
Okay, that's fine.
We could reconstruct every time, but I actually wanted to do it that way so that we could support diffs more easily in the future. So
up to you.
I'd like to do it that way.
If we reconstruct every time, so the client side entity manager never does any deletion, right? Itself, we never.
Let's see. Oh, we need to loop over entities too. Server entity. What were you gonna say about deletion?
Nothing except that we have to deal with it.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's see. So we've got a couple of things here. We have client doesn't have ID, server does. We have client has ID and server does. And then client has ID, server doesn't. These are this is our deletion case, right? Is that we maybe deletion, I think we should pass a delete flag because it's ambiguous. So maybe we'll handle deletion later.
If we are always sending every entity over the wire for now, the way that I would handle deletion is like the Redux way of doing it, which is that if the ID exists in the client side but does not exist in the server side, we just.
Yep. So actually, it's we can do that with this, which is we're going to loop over every entity And we're going to say existing is client and g.clientEntityManager.entities for server entity.id. And then if existing, update and put in next frame entities, else create. And then deletion is actually just it never gets put in the new list, which is g.clientEntityManager.entities equals next frame entities.
Yep. Which is an object keyed by ID, but same difference.
Oh, yep. Cool. Okay. So let's see. So we're going to start with creation, which is type definitions of server entity dot type.
Yes.
What's new? Nope, can't call it that.
E.
Yeah. Now Zoom just took my keyboard for no apparent reason.
Good Zoom. Thanks a lot.
So great. So great. And then new entity dot transform equals server entity dot transform.
Yeah. And then is line 15 going to be the same thing as line 18?
It's line 15. Yeah, you're right. Great.
So I wonder
Great point.
Yeah.
Actually, wait. So if it's existing, maybe you know what,
if it's not existing.
This is let entity, and then this is entity.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. Oh. Whew. Oh, wild ride. If not entity.
Barrel of monkeys.
Dude, right?
Yeah.
And then what is this unhappy about?
Type definitions, and then the parentheses. It's going to be dot make.
Oh, dot make. Yeah. Thank you. Cool. And then I was just say, actually, we can entity dot transform. We can just splat both of these together.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is maybe something like that. Well, why are you unhappy?
Right. Is it parentheses and not curly braces?
Whoa. Yep.
So what this makes me think a little bit. Well, first of all, you don't know if there's a transform on the entity. There's some entities that aren't going to have a transform, so we may want to.
Really, so same thing actually.
Well, I don't think we even want line 17 to run at all if there's no transform on the server entity.
Oh, yeah, that's true. If entity.transform.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the boilerplate we were talking about there, so we don't accidentally set keys that shouldn't be there, right?
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
Cool. And then really this is like const convert vec2.
Yeah.
Is, I don't know, really, let's just make it an
You know what would make your day?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is actually not. So.
Well, actually, you know what is making my day? This never gets converted to JSON.
That's fine. Let's cross that bridge later. I'm totally happy with that. What I was gonna say is that the fact that the type property only ever exists on creations almost makes it seem like there are two different types of messages. One is like full entity state, and one is create. And
that does make my day.
And so so you could have a second entity type or data entity, or it's really just a second message type. Or you could have a different array in the server message, which is like new creations.
I like that. Yeah.
And then that is just an ID and a type that is not, has to be on.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah. Given that it's 5, I want to actually wrap this into the next thing.
Yeah, that's fine.
I want to
totally
use it,
fine.
but
yeah.
I like that a lot. So let's see. So we sync server state on this frame. Yep. We get our entities. God, should this actually work? What have I forgotten? Probably something that the console could tell me about. No, it's not an object. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. Okay, so no player still. Let's maybe log out the message that we're doing.
You could also do debugger right there. That'll you can do breakpoint debugging. It could be that the first frame is going to be confusing though.
The first frame can be confusing. It also looks like we never managed to clear
the server messages.
Yeah.
We clear it right then and there.
I thought I did that. I thought it was the end of our client update though.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, let's drop a debugger in here maybe.
Filter M frame is less than or equal to current frame.
Mm-hmm.
It should probably be fully less than the current, I think. Like strictly.
Okay. So this is, and then we can actually see what's coming in here too, which is frame 0, a ton of entities. I love our first map. Oh man, this is cool. Look at this sucker. Yeah. All right, good job. Good job actually working.
Yep.
And then what? Well, that's okay. What I actually wanted to see anyway is the game.
Oh, we don't set the player pointer.
We don't set the player pointer. Cool.
Wait, did we get rid of the things that are looking at the player directly? We
definitely not.
That's so funny. Line 189 is the new thing. Line 187 is the old thing. Maybe line 187 should just be get player, if this get player.
That?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Let's take that debugger out of here.
And
because it does look like it's actually the player failing in here that's still bugging us out.
Any this.player is a problem. Right?
Well, even this.client any measure.get player is failing for me on line 191. It's failing here as well. Probably maybe because we're banging it out, but I would have expected this to short circuit. Let's refresh this. Oh yeah, wait, debugger's still in there. Something's not actually updating correctly.
Yeah. Good old parcel.
Parcel or Safari is just stuck in a loop. Who knows? Oh shit, that's cool. Cool. Get player.damageable is not there. That's really interesting. Cool. You saw it render for a second too, right?
I didn't.
Oh, there it is. Okay, well, let's check the player health bar. So really everything that uses, oh, there we go.
Didn't we comment out all this stuff? I can't remember. Maybe we did.
I think the UI is still running, but let's kill that too.
Yeah. That's
even easier. Yeah, we have like a coordination problem at start. Okay, cool. That's
not horrible. We're just missing entities. It's not erroring at runtime anymore, right? There's no errors.
It's not erroring at runtime anymore. No, that's true. That's very true.
And the server loop is running first, right? We basically made sure that would happen.
Yeah. That happens at the bottom. I'm just going to reset the context. Yeah, server loop happens there. And then we are 5 frames behind the client, which should be fine. And is there, okay, hang on, is there any, I think
5 frames behind the client. That's the problem.
I think I figured it out.
Yeah.
Well, also in sync server state, I was thinking actually we only toss out the entities if we have a message to go through. So maybe I don't know what's up. Because five frames behind should be okay, right? We should have parsed on client frame 5, we should have read server frame 0 of entities.
We're never writing next frame entities. That's the problem, right?
We're never right. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Whew.
ID. It's the server entity ID.
Entity ID will work too.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's cool. How do you feel about our
Does the
technical
entity
trees?
ID work? Where are we setting the ID on the local entity?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, but it works. That totally works.
Wait a minute. Does the tree entity choose what to do? Sorry, wait, did I make this keyed off the ID?
Say again?
Oh, I was trying to like the trees were, before I did this, the trees were spinning.
No, it's because we're recreating them every single time, right? Because they don't they on the client side they are assigned a random ID, and then because they don't appear, this is like if it was React and you didn't have the same key.
That makes sense, right? Yeah. Right. Okay, cool. Yeah. Great. The game is exactly as unworking as it was before, so that's a great stopping point.
I love it. We're going to be here for probably a month or so, at least.
That's fine. Because let's look at what we did. Like we actually have our server message queue converts our entire state to a message that the client consumes now.
Yep.
Which means that like if there was another player in the system sending messages, they'd also be moving.
Yep.
So that's sick.
And I love how the tank still animates. Well, I would have expected that to break in some subtle way, but it's totally working.
No, we stopped doing the turret animation, but I think that's because we're not handling that input anymore.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, and the turret is going to be the... Oh, yes, I love it. I mean...
The turret's going to be annoying, yeah.
The turret is where prediction is going to be absolutely necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prediction is going to suck. Like, the fact that we have to, like... The fact that we have to, like...
I think
we have to like
predict
we have to predict the creation of rockets, and then they might disappear by accident, or they might end up disappearing.
It's gonna be a lot.
Yeah.
How cool is it? This still works.
It's really dope.
Well, I leave this to you for Wednesday to untangle the next step of this mess.
Yeah. This is we pay it forward.
Yeah. But I continue to feel good about this.
Are we cowards for not merging to master?
Are we? No, we're not cowards.
Okay.
I mean, maybe we should. I just like that master works, right?
Okay, it is true that master works.
It's a game.
But what that means is that we could always just check out. We could tag that as.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm willing to merge.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. All right.
We're not going to be green in the.
We're not going to be green.
I think we've got a bunch of.
Really? That seems silly. We could have fixed that.
It might just be something we need.
Yeah, I've commented out so much of this game already. No, we're green.
Fine. Yarn lint.
Oh, sorry. I'm on master. Who knows? Get tag 0. You know what? This is 1.0.
Okay.
Netplay is 2.0 when we get there.
Git push.
Oh yeah, sure. Tags?
No.
You gotta get push 1.0.
No, I think it's git push hyphen tags.
Interesting.
I think. Oh, that's fine. We just basically push to a branch on origin called 1.0. That's perfect. Actually, that's better than the tag.
No, this is a tag. I made a new tag. You can push tags as branch names because I tagged it. I get tagged 1.0.
That's confusing to me.
I know. It's Git.
It's like a lot of extra value add there.
All right. Well, we're cowards no more. It's merged.
Yeah, nice.
I'm gonna just close this pull request. Nope, that's mine. I'm gonna delete this branch.
Yeah, I think this was just it. It was just like we had some definitions that are not being used right now. It's because.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. I accept that.
Yeah, I accept.
Cool. One laggy game coming up.
Love it.
I do love it. This is cool. Yeah, no, I feel really good about server message and client message. I think it's good that they're not the same. And I like the idea of sort of adding creation, even destruction could happen here. And then this being like a diff. Like, I feel like we can make an efficient format, and until we need to, this is also great. So heck yeah.
Definitely. Sweet.
Cool, dude.
I thought at first you were in like a very fascinating, like octagonal tiled shower.
No, I'm in a Japanese folding screen.
You have a screen, which is honestly just as good.
Were you at Shane the day we all took meetings in the showers?
No.
I think you weren't. Yeah.
Do you want to tell me this off stream, or is it an on stream story?
It's not a stream story. Okay. It was just one day. I forget why. It was like someone was working from home. They lived in a studio, and their partner was taking a meeting in the main space, so they had to take a meeting in their bathtub.
Okay.
And we're like, you're clearly in your bathtub. But if you recall, Shane's office had like 4 bathtubs. So everyone else on the call went and got an individual bathtub. So we had like a solidarity bathtub meeting.
I'm trying to remember the layout of the Chain office. There's definitely the bathtub downstairs.
There's a downstairs bathtub. There's the bathtub up
in the his and hers bathroom.
Right. There was one in each of those, and maybe it was the downstairs bathroom by the kitchen that didn't have a bathroom or bathtub. That was the half bath.
Was there 2 bathrooms upstairs?
Yeah, one on each side. Or no.
What was the one on the other side?
Where's the 4th bathroom? Where's the second shower? Oh, maybe I
think there were 3 bathrooms in the Chain office, right?
And 2 had bathtubs?
2 had bathtub.
My story is much more exciting, but then everyone was in a bathtub, so it's fine.
It's fine. Oh no, wait. There was a second bathroom upstairs. It was on the other side. It was above the first bathroom, right? Like, there's a bathroom downstairs that has the full bathtub. Mm-hmm. And then upstairs from that is another bathroom that had a bathtub.
Correct.
And then there's the his and hers. There's a his and hers above the kitchen that had a bathtub.
Oh, yeah. And then the tiny one downstairs.
And the half bath downstairs.
Yeah.
I'm glad we figured this out, by the way. Like,
there were that many. That 20-person office really needed
Street,
4 bathrooms.
Yeah. An excellent piece of real estate. Beautifully designed. I'll never work in a nicer office. And the most impractical space I've ever been in.
Oh, yeah. The worst noise pollution of any office I've ever had.
Yeah.
And it was worth every second.
Yeah. It had like the weird garden patio deck, which would be fine if you wanted to grow like crops in a weird way. Mm-hmm. Fantastic space. Hayes Valley. Amazing.
Yep. Yeah, the fine offices of the Stellar Development Foundation.
Are they still there?
I think they took our office, yeah.
How does Stellar still exist? Are people still trading Stellar? What is the price of a Stellar woman nowadays?
Not enough, let me tell you. Oh,
what was it before?
Paid when I was getting paid in these. I think it was like 50 cents a lumen.
Oh, right. The acquisition was enumerated. Like, I think I'm still getting like some modest check as a result of that, right?
Yeah, well, it keeps getting smaller.
Well, I don't know. What is this? Over time, it looks like it's going up in 2020, man. I think this is like
The year of the lumen.
if we're gonna
Because
prep, we're gonna diversify our prepping cryptocurrencies.
this was really the crush for me, man. Oh,
Was that like literally when the acquisition happened?
like 2 months after. I think it was September 2018.
I think actually that was probably
I
the
think
cause,
all
right? It was like people were like, "Oh wait, they're paying half of all of the extant lumens to acquire this company."
I think actually it's so much less exciting than that. I think all crypto moves on exactly the same schedule, and that's Bitcoin.
Oh really?
Like I think when you line the graphs up, they just end up being extremely similar. Yeah, like this
Oh, I
dip
see. Yeah.
has nothing to do with us, and even this uptick is like kind of the same uptick. And then all of this is just that no one uses lemons.
Yeah, it just never recovered really.
They're like, you know what? I'm talking trash, but check it out, man. The volume has gone from 100 million in lumens to like 800, 500 million. Like their volume is actually more people are using it.
This all just seems like nonsense. It seems like high frequency scamming, like micro scamming, like literally Mafia Guy A is scamming Mafia Guy B at a very, very large volume, right? Like,
Dude, I have no fucking clue. Yeah. I'm very grateful that I do not work crypto anymore because I always felt that I was like behind the curve or like not in on the joke or something.
yeah.
So who knows?
Let's
But anyway, yeah. On that note, let's make dinner out of food we purchased with not cryptocurrency.
Yeah. There are 4 users in the chat room right now. I keep forgetting to switch to the like people in chat, and I'm not like shouting people out. But
what the heck?
Are you doing recursive? Okay.
No, I wasn't gonna do that. But
I see another TV viewer.
I think that's I think that means they're not logged in.
They're not logged in. There's Bristle Rich.
Oh, yeah.
There's also Lurks with an extra X, which is true to their username because they are lurking. And
yeah.
But thank you for coming at least. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. They're not viewing now, so they've left. But heck yeah, I really like the way you've split up our videos on the stream. By the way, that looks cool.
Oh yeah.
Everyone, this is what everyone else sees. This is the first time I'm seeing it. That looks great.
Yeah, it's Zoom, man.
Zoom. All right. Well, Jeff, until Wednesday's netplay marathon continues.
Yes. See everybody later.
Goodbye.
Take it easy.